Hey fam, good morning, good afternoon, good night. What time is it? It's late. Good evening. Diana here with Coming to Me. So, how you guys been? Hope everybody's well. It's been about, I'd say, a good week since I posted last. So I just wanted to do something really quick. And it's primarily not what I talked about last week in terms of empathy, but what it pertains to is what I spoke about 2 weeks ago regarding the first agreement. In the book I'm referring to is The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And I kind of briefly, because it was in my reality and it was something I wanted to kind of discuss, but it's the first agreement, the impeccability of your word, ultimately. And what it means, I kind of gave a brief reading or kind of explained it briefly, just kind of, speaking, knowing the power of your tongue and so forth. But I wanted to get a little bit more specific and dive in a little bit deeper about what that means, because I recently received kind of like a download in reference to the fine tuning that needs in order to really truly be in integrity, right? And ultimately that's what we want, is to be integrity so that we can be free. So free to be our highest selves and so forth. So I wanted to just read with you briefly. I did recommend the book still. I really think it's such an awesome book. Like, it's just, one little book can leave such an impression, I'm telling you. But yes, so I wanted to go back because there was a part in the book that kind of specifies what the word impeccability means, correct? And so here we go. Now let's see what the word impeccability means. Impeccability means without sin. Impeccable comes from the Latin peccatus, which means sin. So the impeccable means without, so impeccable means without sin, basically. So a sin can technically be said to be anything that you do which goes against yourself, meaning your higher self, correct? That's the self. Most of the times when this book is that's the self that he's referring to, is your higher self, the self that's in the most integrity and alignment with God, with Source, with all that created the universe, right? So yes, so he goes into a little bit more detail. Being without sin is so you go against yourself when you judge or blame yourself for anything. Being without sin is exactly the opposite. So ultimately, sin begins with rejection of yourself. Self-rejection is the biggest sin that you commit. So he then later goes to, in religious terms, self-rejection is a mortal sin which leads to death. Impeccability, on the other hand, leads to life. So one thing that also he says, we have learned to lie as a habit of communication with others, and more importantly with ourselves. We are not impeccable with the word. And for me, this is where I'm just to briefly talk about where I have been feeling like I've not been the most impeccable. For the most part, I try to be pretty aware, and I really do make a conscious effort to kind of just speak my truth, right? Open up this chakra, this throat chakra, and speaking my truth, and just speaking about things that, just verbalizing what's inside my heart ultimately, right? So I watched a video with one of the teachers that I follow, and she kind of specified, and her little thing is these fine tuning that a lot of things require to truly, master these different aspects of these archetypes that we are, and to not to lose consciousness in those roles, right? Anyway, so her name is Mariam Hasna, and she was talking about, on another video that I watched of hers, about how we have to really try to be specific, like there has to be an element of specificity. So because myself, I've had a tendency to not necessarily be impeccable with my speech. I'm sometimes even pure, just completely subconsciously unaware that we aren't being we're in alignment with what's really in our heart, because ultimately that's the connection, right? So what's in your heart is what, not your mind, not all this other stuff, but what's really in your heart. It has to kind of line up. So for example, when we get into an argument, let's say for example with a boyfriend, and he chooses to go out with his friends and he leaves you home, and he says that he doesn't want to go out with you, and whatever it may be, you get pissed off, you want to throw things, get into big argument and all that other stuff. But truly, so you're verbalizing all this kind of stuff, I'm sure, curse words exchanged, who knows what the argument could possibly be. But where I find that we're losing integrity is, like, we're not talking from the heart, and the heart is, that's where the wound is. The wound that's causing you to react in that way is the place where we need to be speaking from, so that we can get the outcomes that we want. Because when we speak from a place of, I feel like you reject me, rather than cursing him out, oh, you always going out with your friends, oh, you do this and that, if we have the strength, because it ultimately takes so much strength to be vulnerable, is something that is a challenge for me, in just being transparent and really practicing it, because we have been convinced since youth to not be in integrity with what our heart says, what our true center, our soul says, right? So for example, instead of coming from that perspective, if you come from the place of where the actual wound of rejection is, then what it's reminding you of, that why is that I feel this way, right? And you can express that honestly, truthfully, in alignment with what, that need. When we have that ability to do that, that's when outcomes become favorable, right? That's when our truth is heard. That's when we are the most free, because when you're lying about stuff and you gotta be hiding stuff and it's all that, you're not free. There's no way. But if you've spoken with goodness, with pureness, from that higher self to someone, and have only done it from a place of love, then ultimately you can pretty much be rest assured that that outcome for that situation, whatever it may be, will be working out for your good. So but yeah, back to my own issue here that I've been having is kind of like picking specific words to really articulate as much as possible, because I feel, we know our language is limited in its capacity to really, our language doesn't have enough words to truly express the emotions, the variety of emotions that we feel, right? But for me, I have been being shown that I need to be more specific with the words that I choose and really speak what I mean. Somebody asks you, are you okay? And rather than either, emotionally spewing on the person one way, or just saying, no, yeah, I'm okay. Whatever it is integrity. Like, ultimately, if you're spewing on the person emotionally, where's that spewing coming from, right? If you're telling somebody, yeah, I'm okay, and that's not really how you're feeling. You feel like you need someone to talk to. You feel like, worked up, stressed out, and you just, I'm okay, it's dismissive. You're rejecting yourself. You're rejecting that truth of that feeling that you have, that need, right? And I think it's been popularized that that's what we do. We have to, fit, and we are not allowed to express what it is that we need. Vulnerability is looked down upon. It's seen as weakness. There's a lot of reasons, ultimately, I think, why we are not in integrity when it comes to, or impeccable with our word, because it's a difficult thing to do. It's challenging, especially to go against the grain. But we have to, for me specifically, where I've come into my reality again, to say specifically, just, you ask questions, speak from your heart. I know, even like, you gotta be careful. It's come into my reality. That's basically it. Like, what do we need to do to be the most in line with our higher purpose, our higher self, right? And he says it, and it's true. When we have the ability to be impeccable with our words, and really take the time to be in our bodies, to truly articulate what we feel, and rather from wounding, because a lot of times it's so subconscious that you don't even realize that you do it. Like yesterday I had a moment where I didn't even realize that I have a tendency to like not be in alignment really with what I'm truly feeling, because I'm trying to anticipate what that person's reaction will be, and so as to kind of buffer it or minimize it or not be rejected by the other person in the event that it doesn't resonate with them, or that truth is not, they don't agree with it, even though it's just an opinion and it's not factual, so it's whatever. But you don't even realize that you kind of tailor your response in anticipation, which is completely like, you allow the person the chance to form their own opinion or answer the question without you tarnishing it or tainting it with your own thoughts of, oh, well, I know this is what they're gonna say, so. But yeah, that happened yesterday, and I was just like, wow, interesting. I'm doing that. And it's funny because I was telling my daughter, don't do that. Don't try to anticipate what mommy's gonna respond. That's why you gotta be honest, because if you're always honest, you allow me the chance to say, okay, well, it's not that big of a deal. Or if you're being in integrity and there's a consequence, that you're able to deal with the consequence, because you know what, at least I know I was being truthful, I was being honest with myself, I was in alignment. But I feel like I'm rambling, so I'm gonna cut this for now.